You're listening to the What's the Fuzz podcast, where we break you out of your vacuum seal and get down to what's real. Never miss another episode again. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. And now, your host, Reiner.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome, listeners new and old. Thanks so much for tuning in. Tonight, we're going to be discussing Black Lives Matter, guns, birds, and furries struggling with social cues, you know, the norm. But before we get into the interview, I'd like to start off with a preamble. First off, really quickly, HMFF has changed to HMHF. There were complications with trademarks and Midwest Fur Fest, so the name is now Harvest Moon Howlfest, if you want to look into them. Getting into the sticky stuff, there's been continued pushback against talking about BLM or the protests happening in the furry fandom. And as things go on, more and more furries are being outed for questionable behavior. It just goes to show that the issues plaguing the US right now doesn't stop on the surface level of someone's city or state. It trickles into subcultures such as the furry fandom. And that brings us here today. By the end of this interview, I hope to find out the answer to a few questions circling around the furry fandom right now. Does BLM have a place in the furry fandom? Do BIPOC furries feel welcome and valued in the fandom? And most of all, what place do guns have in all of this? Tonight I'm sitting down with Crassus, the black avian furry with an itch for guns.
Yeah, it's me.
Hey there, man. How you doing?
Well, I'm not really keen on interviews, but I'm doing fine tonight. You know, just doing my thing.
Hey, man, it's all good. Everybody has their first time, right?
Yeah. I'm glad to be here, though. Glad to, connect with my people because, it's just not really often I get this kind of opportunity. So I'm really glad about it.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. I want to have everybody say their piece if they're able to give it.
Yeah.
And for you guys listening, you can catch him at Marcus_Crassus on Twitter.com. And, well, it's kind of interesting to talk to someone like you because I don't think I've actually met a black guy that was as into guns as you are. Like, most of the avian furries I know are into guns, so maybe there's a correlation there.
I don't really think there's a correlation. Just I've always liked guns. There have been people who are like there's like a scale basically. There's me, and then there's like the crazy people online who like know everything about guns. They know the inside and out. They know exactly which kind of ammunition to use, which kind of gun to use. It's crazy, but it's kind of like with cars and planes. I'm kind of like on the casual end of it, but let's say another stuff.
Gotcha. We'll get into that in a bit, but for now I wanted to ask you how you came into being in the furry fandom.
Okay, so I honestly, for the longest time, was one of those people who were like edgy, anti-furry. I hate furries. They're awful, nasty people. And then I found out about a website called e621.net. And then after like a couple weeks of looking at that website, I was like, this stuff is still pretty awful, but it's not that awful. So I kind of like evolved basically from somebody who was like really really against furries into somebody who was kind of like in the closet about it. And it was only until this year that I basically was like, fuck it, I'm going to be kind of more open and outgoing about it. Like basically I'd only had one commission. I kind of like kept a low profile about it. I liked furry stuff here and there, but wasn't really public about it. It wasn't until this year, obviously, when we go into college and stuff like that, finding my group of furries in college where I was like, oh shit, there's way more people who are into this kind of stuff than me. Like, I expected there to be people, but I didn't expect there to be this much people, like this many people. So it was kind of a weird experience, but now I think in hindsight, I have a much bigger respect for furries and what they do, especially fursuit makers and artists, than I did before. Like a lot of respect, basically. So yeah, it's kind of ironic.
Yeah, kind of all things to turn you, it turned out to be the porn site. I mean,
I mean, let's be real. Crystal from Star Fox
oh
and
no, don't.
Callie Briggs from SWAT Cats, they did something to me,
No,
man.
what?
Yeah, I kind of like didn't know what I was feeling about them. I used to play Star Fox a lot when I was a kid. I was like, oh shit, Fox McCloud, he's kind of dope. And then when I got older, I didn't really understand what I was feeling until I was like actually 18. I was like, oh shit, I was horny. But
Wow.
yeah, it's kind of ironic. Like
Just putting it all out there.
I'm being upfront and honest with you about everything tonight. So
I might as well, right?
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, hey, dude, welcome to the dark side. How you been liking it so far?
Um, I'm kind of like low key about my interests and stuff. I'm very, very, very vanilla on my
Mm-hmm.
interests. There are some people who are like much more outgoing. That's their stuff. Uh, but I guess it took a lot of my like discipline and like courage to kind of like come out with this kind of stuff. Like in general, being a furry online is kind of like putting a big red target on you for like everybody on the internet, because literally everybody will ridicule you, even the fucking anime fans. But I don't know, man. It's kind of weird. Like as soon as you like kind of get outgoing and like more confident with you becoming a furry, like I did this year, you kind of get a lot more outgoing in terms of like your interests and sexuality stuff. Like I'm still very much vanilla, straight, uh, not really like super in depth into this kind of stuff. But like I've noticed a lot of other people basically evolve. Like it's really cool, like and interesting to study it.
How do you mean by study? Do you just like get your furry friends in college together and you just pass around stories or something?
Okay, so like I'm gonna use a friend of mine as a case example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give him the pseudonym of Andrew for anonymity. Basically, Andrew was kind of like me growing up, where he hated furries and he absolutely despised furry art. And then for some
Right.
reason, he found out about Zong Punch, which I think everybody knows about Zong Punch. And he came to me, and he knew I was kind of like half and half. I hate furries. I like furries at the time. He was like, "Yo, Crassus, look at this," and I was like, "Yes, that's Zong Punch, bro. Why are you looking at that stuff? I thought you didn't like it." He was like, "Nah, man, this stuff is kind of cool." So next thing I know, Andrew turns out to
What?
be a very, very gay and very outgoing, flamboyant, and very confident furry. And he hit
Mm-hmm.
me up like a couple of months ago, and he's like, "Hey, Crassus, I remember you. You were kind of like a big inspiration for me in terms of furry stuff." And I was like, dude, I wasn't even a furry at the time, but appreciate it. Thanks, dog." So it's kind of weird.
That
Really kind of weird.
is very interesting.
You know, everybody has their own different stories, but I guess mine tend to be kind of weird. It's really weird.
I mean,
Yeah.
porn brought me to the fandom too, but goddamn, Zog Punch? That's like hardcore shit, bro. You're just
That's
like
like
going in
okay.
full front.
That's like fucking Gucci or Versace in terms of porn stuff. Because Zon Punch puts out really high quality stuff. Like
Yeah, for real.
I guess that's how a lot of people got hooked. They were like, "Oh shit, this stuff is kind of dope," and then they become furries. So it is what it is.
You're right about that. Well, you've been in the fandom for like a little bit now. Congrats on stepping in right when we decided to all shit ourselves. Really
Yeah,
appreciate that.
honestly.
Why do you feel like there's so much pushback against real life events as far as BLM and the fandom? Considering the in the past, furries have raised money for ALS, cancer, and dog shading areas.
Okay, so that's kind of like a complicated question because I obviously haven't really been in the fandom long enough to like kind of understand like the whole fundraising aspect of it. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we raise money to donate to like charities, foundations, stuff like that, animal rights stuff, and it's cool. And there's always been like an inkling in my mind that yes, there would be black furries, but there wouldn't be a lot of them. I think a big reason of why there's so much pushback for BLM stuff this year is kind of because of the president in office. Because once Donald Trump got elected, like shit basically changed and it hit the fan. Like like if you know what I mean, like we basically got really aware of like all this shit and injustice that's going on in our country, and that made its way into the furry community with people noticing, oh, this con has fucking clan members on the chair. Oh, this con is kind of racist. Oh, this very famous fursuiter actually is a super racist with a Confederate flag fursuit. Basically, those are just examples, but like you get what I mean. Basically, we're starting to become a lot more like aware of our surroundings and aware of the world around us. I feel,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a good thing, but also, I feel like some people are kind of getting way too emotional, way too hostile. Like, it's kind of hard to explain, but like with the whole protest and stuff, I felt like in the beginning we had an objective, we had a goal, and then there are people who were like kind of trying to take us away from that goal. Like there are people who are trying to detract us from that goal, and it's a lot of emotional stuff, which I want to talk to you about that in a bit, about the emotional stuff and people getting distracted. But I guess that'll answer your question. People just are starting to become more aware of this kind of stuff because of the environment we live in now.
So the hot Cheeto in office is to blame.
I mean, I don't think he specifically like this is kind of going to sound really sus.
Hmm.
I don't think he really does a lot of stupid stuff. Well, actually, he does. I'm going to take that back. But like, just the fact that he's in office, the fact that somebody that's so universally hated, not even in our country but in the world, the fact
Mm-hmm.
that he's to blame for like a myriad of like shitty circumstances and decisions in our country, and the fact that we have like this strong conservative base and strong conservative rebirth right now, I think that's to blame basically. Like, there's a lot of factors that go into this, but I guess he's one of them. It's really, really messed up, dude.
Yeah. The hate groups and the conservatives and people that just want to exclude other people on the basis of them not being good enough for their skin color or their brain structure, bones or whatever, they're just
Hmm.
spurred on by him. It's like encouragement, like, "Ooh, you guys are doing a great job. You're such kind people. You're great people, brave people, yada yada." So it doesn't matter how much the black and brown people shit on you. You got your
Yeah.
president's back. He is your homeboy. He thinks you are the shit,
About
right?
that, I think like I think that's their guy basically. Like, I don't really care enough about Trump to make a lot of like really really intellectual like depictions of him basically. But
Hmm.
like, if you remember when Obama was elected, like I was young when Obama got elected, but like, man, he's somebody you could all look up to. Like, he showed us that a black man can make it in America, and I think Trump is kind of like the opposite of that, where
Mm-hmm.
basically he's like a figurehead for like either the white middle class or white working class people. I don't really know because I'm not white, but he's kind of like their figurehead. He's kind of like the figurehead of like the modern conservative counter woke kind of culture that's countering the whole overly PC SJW culture. Like if you remember back in the election 2016 stuff like that, that was basically like the whole SJW culture against the anti-SJW culture. Like Trump's people were basically, well, a lot of his voter base was basically people from 4chan that are like meme lords, Pakistani meme lords and shit like that. Dumb, cringy shit like that. They had somebody to look up to. We don't really have somebody to look up to, basically. It's really shitty. So we're kind of in a really bad predicament, I guess.
Yeah, it's looking a little bleak, but I think something that came out of the protests that's positive is seeing people that stand up on the podiums, putting their life at risk because they are showing their face. They are putting their words out there about the system, and they don't know what'll happen the next day. They don't know if they're going to be hung the next day, if their house is going to get bombed, if they're going to be kidnapped by the government or something. It's crazy times that we live in right now, for
Mm-hmm.
real.
Like, if you've seen in Portland right now, it's crazy. Like,
It
Trump
it is
Trump basically
insane.
hinted Trump basically hinted in one of his speeches that he was gonna invoke the power of the federal government if the
Mm-hmm.
states didn't fight back against the protesters. And I think that's what he's doing in Portland. Because you have federal agents in like really high quality military gear, federal agents that aren't trained to like deploy against mass protests. They're trained for specifically counterterrorism and stuff like that. So basically, you have counterterrorism trained people going up against just random protesters, making people fucking disappear in vans just because like he wants to target some Antifa people. Which honestly, man, like now that I think about it, Antifa isn't really the root of the problem. Like
Exactly. But we're gonna have to go back to that later on. We went on a tangent of a tangent of a tangent.
Oh, holy shit! I went on a huge.
All right, we'll go
tangent.
back to it. I promise.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned your sexuality briefly before, right?
Yeah.
So how would you describe your sexuality right now?
Straight, open parentheses, question mark, close parentheses.
What?
Honestly, man,
You're heteroflexible?
I don't know. I don't know the exact words to use. Like, I'm not an expert on this kind of stuff. Like, I always go to people and ask them, like, what does non-binary mean? What does this kind of gender mean? Like, I don't really understand it. Basically, like, I kind of think about it way too much. Some people think about it way too much. I kind of just want to just vibe, basically. I really don't think that this kind of stuff is stuff I should be stressing myself out over. Like, yeah, this guy is kind of cool looking. This girl is very cute. But it's really, really complicated for me. Like, I don't really mind talking to people about it. But I have like followers and people that'll get really sus if I say stuff like, "Wow, look at this guy is pretty cool," or if I accidentally like a picture of a fucking buff person or buff furry, they're like, "Uh oh, Crassus is liking the gay stuff." Like, honestly, dude, fuck off. I can like whatever I want on here. I can do whatever I want, but I think I'm kind of just chilling basically in terms of that kind of stuff. If you want like an official, like on the record kind of definition for my sexuality stuff, I guess questioning is the closest answer, or straight with a question mark. But you know, it's whatever you feel like.
Okay, fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of weird that they would harass you over that though, because a lot of furries are bi or pansexual, actually.
I mean, like some of them are non-furry friends. Like I like before I became a furry, I've been friends with a lot of like non-furry people who tend to like kind of view that stuff with suspicion, and some of them are gay or bi, and they're like, "Uh oh, Crassus is liking the gay stuff." Uh oh. I guess like it's kind of a mixed bag basically. There are some people I know who like they have followers and friends who will basically witch hunt them and scour their likes and retweets for stuff that's like borderline suspect.
What the hell?
Like believe me when I say there are people who are like uber fucking like conservative or like really paranoid about that kind of stuff who are like, uh oh, you're liking the horny stuff. Uh oh, that's not gonna be good. I don't mean to call those people out right now, but some of them can kind of like, they need to chill on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for real. That's totally harshing the vibe, dude. You're just trying to fucking vibe, right?
I mean, yeah, like some of them do a really good job at like minding their own business, but people that are like always on the prowl to try and prove something or try and like find out, oh, what is Crassus like in today? I don't really tend to stick around them that much. The people who don't bother me about that kind of stuff, and the people who like I can go to, and they may not agree with me on some politics or some sexuality stuff, but they at least understand me and they will help me and they will like talk to me about that kind of stuff. Yeah, totally. They're cool people. So it's always a balance of trying to find who's gonna be there, who's actually gonna be your friend, and who's just there for clout or trying to find something to get you about. So,
Ooh, imagine trying to get some of that bird clout.
oh my
Wild.
god,
Bruh, you need to blow
birds,
those fools up. You need to fucking have a day where you just retweeting like nothing but hot bara furry dudes nonstop all day.
bro. If you see me, some days I randomly go on like struggle posts about tomboys and twunks,
Yeah.
just out of like humor, basically.
90% of the stuff that ends up on my feed from you is either a bird or a gun. Like straight. I've I've hardly seen anything else come out of your account since I started following you.
I mean, that's
I,
good. Like, it's a really good balance of content. You have cute birds one day, and then you have wow, a cool firearm the other day. So honestly, like, I sometimes feel like I go way overboard with gun posting and stuff like that because there are some people who like don't really like that kind of stuff. Like, I had one guy come to me who's like, I don't really like this kind of gun stuff, and I was like, oh, sorry for retweeting gun stuff on your timeline. And then I have other people who are like, Crassus, I need you to help me identify this bird. And then they send me a picture of some bird I've never seen before in my life, or some gun I've never seen before in my life, and I'm like, "Hello, what is this?
hmm.
Why are you showing me this, dude?" So it's weird.
All right. Well, would you say that being a furry had an influence on or made it easier for you to express yourself sexually?
Okay, so to answer that, I'm gonna have to do another tangent. Basically, I've discovered there's a difference between how us Westerners view furries and how like Japanese, Chinese, other Asian ethnicities, how they view furries. We view
Hmm.
them as kind of like an extension of ourselves and kind of like as our personal mascot or like persona, which persona is two very same things. Japanese, Japanese, Chinese, Asian furry cultures they view it as kind of like just a character. Like the maker of the furry and the actual furry character are two totally different things. So like picture like you at a convention and you're really stoked to see this very cool internet personality who has a really cool persona, and then he comes up to you, and it's basically a different character, and the persona is actually the human. That's how that's how I've kind of felt for being a furry in the beginning phase. At least it was kind of like a character, basically, not really like me. It wasn't until like I guess a year ago or this year actually when I was like, maybe I can actually find things that will relate me to this bird character I've made. So like, I made a whole thread on it earlier. There's like a lot of inspiration of like personal interests and like aesthetic interests that went into the making of my persona, and I think that translated to me being more outgoing as a person. Like the whole body type, the whole like interest in music, aesthetics, vaporwave kind of stuff, guns, African culture. It's all been pitched into this character I made, and I'm kind of really happy, I guess, with it. So I guess that'll answer your question.
So the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
although although you wanted to know how that's affected me sexually as well, which I can answer as well. Um,
Oh, hang on. Since you're a bird, do you get sexually aroused when people rub your chest?
Okay, I do it. Okay, so I'm really like kind of ticklish. So if somebody tries to touch me, I'll probably break their hand. But
I see.
I guess this is for the books. Probably. I guess the furry me will. IRL me won't, but the furry me will because if you touch a bird in the chest or like under the wings, or in a certain way on their neck, they get aroused, which is it's the thing I tell everybody who owns a bird: don't do that. Like, don't do that. You'll get your bird horny for you. Luckily, my bird is not. My bird is a good boy.
As you were saying.
Yeah, I guess that basically answers the question. Yes, in the short term. I just felt like
Yes.
going on an anecdote about it.
Gotcha. Oh my gosh. I can't believe you really answered that question. That's just great. So, really quickly, I've linked resources in the show notes, or in case you're on my website, rhinorights.com, it should be the first link you see on the episode display page. There's tons of BLM resources and other stuff. I try to keep it updated. What's the Fuzz is a growing show, and as you guys have probably noticed, we've just hit 100 downloads. Hooray! Confetti. So a quick shout out to everyone that's been listening and enjoying the show along the way. Thank you so much. Big thanks to Awooga and Beep for their support on Coffee. Super generous donations, and without you guys, I wouldn't have been able to afford the new website or the recording equipment we needed to make sure the show is as polished as possible. If you want to help out in other ways, you can just follow me at Reiner80 on Twitter, or my sound engineer VioGoat on Twitter as well. And to keep up with all things Reiner related, you just need to head over to @ReinerWrites on Telegram to join my channel. Okay, that's it. Back with the show.
Yo.
Okay, it's gun time.
Let's go.
Okay. Calm down. You're only like 19, right?
Yeah.
Damn, they're starting them young. God damn, America. Look what you're doing to the youth. Anyways, how would you describe your relationship with guns? Are you a gun nut, a gun enthusiast, or...
I'd say gun enthusiast, because the difference between a gun nut and a gun enthusiast is that a gun enthusiast just likes guns. A gun nut is basically a stan of guns. They're like the K-pop stan of guns, and they will go above and beyond to like explain to you why X gun that they like is better than any gun ever made ever in the history of humanity. So I'm kind of like the guy who's like, yeah, I just like guns. Guns are cool. I have my favorites, but I don't go out of my way to like tell people that their favorite gun is disgusting or stupid. You know.
Rusty old fucking bucket of junk.
Oh my god. I need to tell you about one thing about that when I get the time, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I have a buddy that's like that. He's like super obsessed with guns. He keeps spending money on guns, and then we're like, why do I keep spending money on guns? And I'm like, I don't know, dude. Maybe you should stop buying $500 guns every 2 weeks. And he's like, no, I want the gun. He's like, okay, dude, if you want to do that, don't complain about it. Shit.
Right.
Oh, man. It's people like that. Now, for those who aren't familiar, a while back there were anti-mask protests, and a good chunk of the protesters decided it would be a great idea to storm the Michigan State Capitol, fully decked out in guns, ammo, bulletproof vests, etc., the whole shebang. What I want to know is, how do you feel knowing that this happened, and then when black people started to suit up after being attacked time and time again after peacefully protesting, news outlets tried to fearmonger and act as though these people were more dangerous? How do you feel about this situation?
Okay, first of all, you need to understand the media loves to spin a story. They will show you videos and images of like white guys with like weird fucked up random kit walking around in like Virginia and Michigan, and they will call them either A, terrorists, like evil people, or B, heroes protecting the Second Amendment and stuff like that. The same way that they'll try to spin a story to appease the masses is the same way that it's the same thing that they do to us. Like they'll call like certain outlets will call us like, ooh, scary terroristic BLM protesters, who like make roadblocks and who shoot up places and stuff like that. It's all a matter of optics, and it's all a matter of how the media wants to portray us. Basically, like it's fucked up. Basically, honestly, there are people who have good intentions with what they do with protesting armed. Like it's basically to show a point or to like I guess protect themselves. But the moment like that happens, people will like fucking go crazy and they will go wild about that kind of stuff. And at any convenience, they'll use it to spin a story. So I don't know if you're familiar with like the whole Boogaloo people. Like they're kind of weird. They're kind of stupid. They kind of make me wonder if I should stop wearing floral shirts and all. But like I feel like they've gotten the really bad end of the stick when it comes to like the media stuff because the media likes to portray them as stuff that personally I don't really think they are. Same thing with like BLM armed protesters. Like there are protesters that were in Atlanta and like Stone Mountain, my home, a while back, armed, basically marching, which cool as hell. They weren't shot, they weren't attacked. They were doing really perfectly fine. But like the media basically will portray them as either A, very evil, very scary armed black people marching in a militaristic fashion, or B, heroes. People protesting fucking people getting shot up, stuff like that. It's really, 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 really messed up the way that the media has this much power and this much control over how like people view things. So I guess that's kind of like a long answer to your question.
So as long as the news is involved in some way, things are just going to be fucked up.
I mean, there's not really much we can do about the news getting involved in this kind of stuff. Like, it's all a matter of like what's going to look best in the headlines. So the media will always be there. They'll always be kind of powerful and like manipulative. So you just need to like basically find your own way.
True.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the sensationalism, what's going to get people watching, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
a pretty fair way to look at it.
Yeah.
Now, a while back, a friend of mine, another avian gun nut, told
Mm-hmm.
me about his ideal of a safe society. And a safe society to him was everybody armed to the teeth. And his theory was that since everyone was armed, people would be less likely to mess with each other. I've been
Mm-hmm.
against guns for a long time. They just seemed like meaningless, only really useful in the Wild West or action movies.
Mm-hmm.
But with the kidnappings in Portland going on, rampant police brutality, and everything else, I'm starting to understand why people like him have that stance. It's better
Yeah.
to feel like you can do something than to feel helpless.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that I'm wholly convinced on the idea or anything, but it makes me think for sure.
Yeah.
So, what do you think would be
Well,
better?
what your friend basically described is kind of like the equivalent to what we were doing in the Cold War, but with nuclear weapons. So it was basically that, but on a much smaller scale. Basically, gun deterrence. If everybody is armed, everybody's going to be less likely to mess with each other. Basically, simple as. I personally like, in terms of Second Amendment gun stuff, like as somebody who's like into guns and stuff like that, yeah, they're really cool. I guess people should be allowed to own guns. But when you think about it, like actually, like not just in terms of meme stuff, like yeah, guns, cool guns, stuff like that. Like the government, they're kind of assholes basically. Like they'll take any like excuse to go in and invoke the power of the federal government to either take somebody's guns or like take somebody out who has guns. Like they've done it before in like primarily the 90s with people like the Waco siege and Randy Weaver, stuff like that, where people have guns and the feds see them as kind of dangerous, and then they swoop in and either murder everybody or get away with murdering a lot of people. In terms of that, and today, I think it's kind of the same deal where we have federal people coming in, acting crazy, acting weird, kidnapping people, people going missing, which brings into question like the whole idea of why we have this gun stuff. It's basically to protect against an oppressive government. People seem to think that gun stuff is kind of like a scary white alt-right white nationalist kind of thing. And when people think of gun people, they immediately think of scary white guys with hats, red hats, and guns. But they need to
pretty
realize
much.
that there's like a growing group of people like me who are very much into guns, very much interested in the guns, but they don't fall under that demographic of like right wing people, where they need to like basically get with those people and figure things out, because like I feel like if we understand like guns are kind of like a universal thing and not just like a scary white people thing, we can go forward and do a lot more change, not just with guns, but with a lot of other things, because there are a lot of things that we can agree on with, I guess, those kinds of people. It's weird though. It's really, really hard to have that kind of talk though with people, I will say.
With what's going on right now, it kind of helps put things into perspective, because the whole reason that we have the Second Amendment is to make sure the government doesn't fuck our shit up. And
Exactly.
and now they're all fucking our shit up.
And that's the thing, like
yeah,
a lot of people who are like pro gun and stuff like that, they're just now thinking that like, wow, these BLM people are kind of assholes. They're not like they want to use like our guns and our like, I guess, ideology to fight back against the people when they weren't really on our side. Which it's really messed up, honestly. Like I've talked with some of them where basically they think that they're going to be risking their lives for us when they should be worrying about their lives being crushed by the government as well. So as soon as people get out of this phase of like thinking about me, and more about us, I think there's going to be much more hope for us in the future.
Yeah, American individualism has just rotted the shit out of our country, man.
Yeah.
It's so depressing. If it's not happening literally in your house at that moment, it doesn't apply to you. You just don't care. It could be down the street. Oh, that's his problem.
Yeah.
That ain't my problem. That's his problem. Why do I gotta get dragged into it? That kind of shit.
That's kind of like what people are feeling now. We're basically like, they just now have realized how shitty our justice system, how shitty our justice system is, how shitty the police are, how shitty trained they are. They're just now noticing it when people like us have been experiencing it for basically years, our entire lives. They're just now waking up to it. Honestly, like, good thing that you're waking up to it, but you could have done it a little bit earlier, man.
They could have done it a lot earlier. Like, I can't remember the exact incident. I wish I did. Do you know about the LA riots?
Oh, of course, of course, of course. Honestly, like the LA riots and how like June played out with the whole protests and how George Floyd's like basically, I guess, death sparked the nationwide riots. Really, really similar, like eerily similar to the LA riots. Like I don't even know, man. It's like it's crazy how history does this, where there's an event that happens, and then like 20 years later, the exact same event happens. So people should have taken notes from the LA riots on what to do. But I guess it's past that point of no return, sadly.
Yeah, it's past that point because they don't have to rely on news outlets to spread information around. They have their phones. They have pictures and videos, wherever they go, they can tell people the real story now. And it can't be spun around by news networks. And of course, crazy alt-right people are going to be crazy alt-right people no matter what. And they're just going to sit there and go, oh, silly Negro. That kind of thing.
Honestly, I guess this kind of relates to like my interest in guns. but I found that searching up like niche esoteric Twitter accounts that are like covering wars in the Middle East, like journalists that are boots on the ground covering conflicts and stuff like that, I find that to be much more engaging and much more interesting and ultimately much more informative than like bigger media outlets. Like people that actually go in the places and like document what's happening live. That's much more interesting of a field than, big corporate office media that's pumped out en masse, basically. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the term OSINT, but that's basically it. It's called open source intelligence, which is kind of a nerdy topic, but I can talk to you about it later.
Oh yeah, I think I actually have heard of that before. I just didn't like look into it.
I mean, yeah, like I guess the biggest like tale I use to get people into OSINT is a story from 4chan where basically there was an ISIS video of them training out in the desert, and a bunch of people from 4chan were trying to geolocate where the training camp was. They eventually geolocated it and sent it to the Russian Air Force, and they were like, "Hey, Russia, bomb this place." And then 2 days later, Russia bombed the camp and killed a big terrorist leader. So it shows how powerful information is nowadays and how easily accessible it is. But it also shows that, like, man, big media outlets could be using this kind of stuff for good, but they're not. You know?
Yeah, seriously, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Do you feel as though there's a disconnect between the furry fandom as a whole and the BIPOC furries from like the Twitter interactions that you've been seeing and stuff?
Um. Okay, kind of, because like I don't know. Like I think you've obviously experienced this before, where like the BIPOC, or I guess Black Indigenous people of color, that furry experience is much different than the white furry experience. Like, to use a personal anecdote, I went to a local meetup in Orlando with some college friends of mine. I was the only black furry there, and I didn't really feel like I kind of fit in a lot, because like you kind of have this mental image in your head of furries being like, I guess, the white nerdy guy with glasses, or I guess the party gay guy with a really cool fursuit. It's weird, man. And seeing people come out and make like stories about their experience at cons, which I've never really been to a con before, but like seeing their experiences at cons, seeing the experience of like passive racism going on in the fandom, you understand that stuff like this is basically like rampant in the fandom. Like you'll get people who say they know best on behalf of like all BIPOC furries when they themselves are not BIPOC. You'll get people who like are so totally disconnected to what's going on that they'll say the stupidest shit without even thinking. And then you'll see people who are like so disconnected and so emotional that they'll also say stuff that's off the zoinkies, and it's really sad, man. Honestly, like I kind of expected a lot better from furries for being a culture of like inclusivity and positivity, and then seeing casual racism go on. It's not really fun, man.
Yeah,
Like,
that casual racism, it seems to happen because it's just a white person bouncing off of a white person, and they don't even
mhm.
realize that they're being casually racist. And then black people or brown people see it and they're like, whoa, dude, hold up there.
Like in my time online, like not even as a furry, but just as my time online on the internet, one thing I've noticed is that there's kind of like two kinds of racist people. There's the one who's like kind of out there, like, yeah, I'm racist. So what? He's like the meme of like the big muscle Chad guy, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm racist. So what? And then there's the guy who are like most racist furries, where they don't seem racist. They kind of seem like they're kind of like, they're on your side. Yeah, yeah, I'm on your side. I'm in this together. And then they kind of stab you in the back, or they say the stupidest shit, and then you uncover it, and then you see how shitty of a person they are. They're kind of like the sleeper racists. I kind of use that term. Like, I don't know if you saw that post I made earlier, there have been so many people that have told me I don't act black or I act white, and it honestly pisses me off, man. Like, you say you're on our side, but then you say stuff like that, and it instantly neutralizes your argument. Like, it's crazy, man. It's crazy, honestly, crazy.
How exactly do they expect you to quote unquote act black? Do they want you to fucking post rap lyrics every day to
Exactly,
call everybody your nigga? I said
exactly,
that as white as possible.
exactly. This is
But
okay.
like seriously.
Exactly. This is the same shit I experienced in high school because I went to a predominantly white private high school. I was basically the only black kid in my grade for a very long time, and I had people who would come to me as if I was the messiah, asking me, "Oh, what's the latest in black culture, Crassus? Oh, your
Oh
dad,
no.
because I didn't tell you, but my dad is kind of like a really kind of like pivotal, like kind of important culture head, basically in Atlanta, because he was on the radio and basically everybody knew him. So people would come to me and be like, "Hey, your dad, so and so." They talk to me about my dad. They talk to me about freaking black stuff, rap music, stuff like that, as if I was the only black person in the world. And it's maddening, dude. Like I don't know if you've experienced that before, but like picture being a fucking parrot in a zoo, like a very colorful parrot, and people just like, wow, look at this really colorful parrot. They kind of like treat you as a zoo animal, basically. It's kind of ironic because blue parrot and all.
No, trust me, I got some of that myself. My
Yeah.
last year of high school, senior year, I went back to this small town in southern Illinois where I
Hmm.
spent part of my middle school years. I spent the other years in California, but I went back for my last year. And people just would come up to me and they would ask the stupidest fucking questions since I was the only black person and the only Mexican person. So they would ask me where my dad was and if I know how to speak Spanish or could like translate shit for them, if I liked being black? Question mark. What
Hmm.
my favorite kind of fried chicken was once.
Holy shit! Have you ever been asked the have you ever been asked the question about what's your favorite rap artist? When honestly, I'm not that much into rap. I'm more into like other genres. Like, oh,
They were very surprised to know
oh
that I did not like rap music of any kind,
my god.
which has changed now. I like Biggie and Tupac, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, back then I wasn't quote unquote very black acting.
Like I've got a lot of it from not just furries, but like people IRL normies. So basically, where they basically will judge you off your skin color alone, basically, and that's just grounds to brick yourself. Like if you think you can speak on behalf of me or judge me for my skin color alone, just brick yourself. And like there are people who like claim there are all these trendy ideologies, like, oh, I'm a self-proclaimed communist. I'm a self-proclaimed socialist. I think I know what's best for for the black people of America. And like you view these people as if they're fucking crazies because they are crazies. They don't know what's best because they haven't been in our shoes. Like they think they know how to solve the problem when they won't listen to us on like solutions on how to solve the problem. They think that they're going to be the ones to save our country, stuff like that. When really, I guess we're in a better position to do it. And they think that we don't have a voice, so they'll speak for us when we have a voice. It's just not loud enough because y'all take up the fucking stage basically too much. So it is what it
Exactly.
is.
Black people are loud because white people be suppressing our voices. I'm not
Hmm.
personally that loud, but you know what I
Like
mean.
honestly, man, like I think you've seen my Twitter where I basically kind of go out of my way not to get involved in this kind of stuff. But sometimes stuff like this sets me off. Where like I an apolitical person will like have to take have to take a stand on stuff like this, and it's basically when people think they know what's best on behalf of us and think they know how to solve the problem when they haven't really experienced our problems. Like, it's crazy. It's
It's the
crazy,
most
crazy, crazy.
patronizing shit to experience, point blank, ever, period.
Yep,
If white people want to
exactly.
help us, they can start taking accountability, elevating black voices, and promoting people of color. Period. That's it.
Exactly. I
You
think
don't need to baby us.
I think the kind of murky situation we've got ourselves in is kind of that we're stuck in a feedback loop of getting all these constant superficial victories and epic wins against the epic evil racists, basically. Like, if you remember the whole George Floyd Funko Pop shit, if you remember that, if you
What?
remember,
They
yeah,
what?
if you remember, the Karens basically coming out, the celebrity Karens basically coming out and saying, "I take responsibility." All the brands removing, like, I guess stuff that could be seen as racist. All the
Yeah.
cartoon voice actors basically coming out and saying they don't want to voice characters of color anymore. When really, voice has no color. Like, you can listen to me right now, and you'd say like, "Wow, is Crassus a white guy or is he a black guy?" But anyways, we get all these superficial victories in way of the actual victories. So it's kind of maddening, dude. We're kind of like in hell right now, where we want to have all these changes, but like I guess the whole woke society, the whole, I guess, masses, they want all these now victories. They want superficial victories. They want like political correctness instead of political change, basically. Which political correctness can only go so far, but change will actually do stuff. So there's probably a Malcolm X quote for it. There actually is, but it's messed up, man.
There probably is. But it's
Mm-hmm.
funny, they're doing all these like little performative changes or whatever. And the
Mm-hmm.
one small thing that black people actually did want was the band-aids that were the color of their skin.
Yep.
Like that's the one small thing, but no, have these other small things you didn't want or ask for at any point in time ever. Uh
Exactly.
well, there is one victory that I am pretty happy about. Well, actually two.
Mm-hmm.
The Native Americans getting a lot of Oklahoma,
Yep.
uh and the Washington slur name finally changing their name.
They finally did it
Like they're
after like all these
last I
years.
checked, they are changing their fucking name. Yes.
Jeez, man. They
Like
finally did it.
I'm not up to date in sports and stuff, but back in high school, my English teacher actually brought it to our attention. Hey, the Washington blank has this name and it's really offensive, guys. And we just
Mm-hmm.
looked at him with this blank stare, and he was like, well, what if they were named the Blacks? And we were like, oh.
Imagine if the Atlanta Falcons were named the Atlanta Niggas.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That fucking.
That's basically the equivalent.
You know, I'm not surprised that we don't actually have a mascot like that. Like in fucking
Mm-hmm.
blackface with watermelon and shit. Like,
Yeah.
honestly.
Mm-hmm.
My gosh.
It's
Alright.
crazy.
For the last question tonight, I'm gonna ask you, are there any black furries in the fandom that deserve more recognition or you feel as though should have more recognition for the work that they've put into the fandom?
Okay, I'm gonna start name dropping people and acts. Arachnid VHS, the spider. Uh, man, man. I was inspired by like what she put out of like all this historical stuff because I have like an affinity for history. Like, and basically Mandy coming out and saying this stuff like historical stuff kind of has inspired me to make my own historical threads. So shout out. There's VHS Dragon X is a mutual of mine who is on the SoCal Chef Show, and that's a really fun show that I've actually called in on, and it was really hilarious. You know, just to talk to them basically. A friend of mine, Snoopy underscore Mayhem, is another black furry. He's Air Force furry. Uh, I respect him a lot because he speaks what's on his mind. He doesn't really speak something to like appease people. Like basically, he says what's on his mind. He's very real. Basically, you may not agree with what people say, but I can at least respect that you'll say what you want to say. You know. Other people, I don't really know other people that I can list off the top of my head, but that's basically it.
That sounds like a pretty good list there.
Yeah.
You didn't want to throw yourself in there?
I mean, I would throw myself in there, but the content I make is so random and absurdist that some people are like, "What the hell is Crassus doing? What is he saying?" Like, it's basically the Jesse, "What the hell are you talking about?" meme. But like, people seem to like it when I talk about historical stuff. Like one of the most popular posts I've made was a post on a war in Africa called the Toyota War,
Oh
which
yeah, I remember
I
you
could
posting
go
about that one.
I
Yeah,
could go on about that one, but I won't because I don't want to take up too much of your time.
give us like a quick summary for those who don't know.
Okay, so the Toyota War was a conflict between Libya and Chad, in which Libya, armed with helicopters, jets, planes, tanks, and stuff like that, they were trying to invade and occupy a section of Chad, which is another African country. But Chad, they had basically pickup trucks and kind of like horror equipment. Chad managed to pull off an insane number of attacks and offenses on Libya to the point where Libya basically got humiliated on the international scale. And it was called the Toyota War because Chad used a lot of Toyota trucks, and it cemented the Toyota truck as a very like versatile and like effective tool in the modern battlefield. Like if you look at Syria nowadays and Syria, Libya, Iraq, stuff like that, the pickup truck, the technical, is basically like it's everything. It can be your transport, it can be your tank destroyer, it can be your little machine gun on wheels, it can be whatever. So it's really really interesting. I think
For some reason, I wasn't expecting there to be actual Toyota trucks involved. Like I thought it was just like an acronym or something.
oh believe me, there are actual Toyota trucks involved, and like I feel like African conflicts and stuff like that are really, really interesting. Not a lot of people cover them because Africa is kind of like a continent where people gloss over stuff like, oh, colonialism happened here. Oh, it's kind of a continent that's screwed up. But there's a lot of interesting like lessons to be learned from the various wars in Africa. Like I could go on about them, but I won't. I don't want to take up your time or bore you or make you go to sleep.
Oh, I don't think that stuff's boring at all. One of the things I remember from not U.S. history. Oh my god, world history was the Belgians in the Congo.
Holy shit, man!
All that
I,
fucked up shit. King Leopold or whatever his name
Dude,
was, cutting off people's hands and shit. Like what the fuck?
The Belgians had no chill, and people forgot that the Belgians had no chill. And like the whole thing with Zaire is basically a testament to how fucked up this whole colonial system was. Where basically Belgians left Zaire was basically like a puppet to European powers, basically a testament to how messed up African dictators will be. So I'm making a thread on Zaire, the first Congo War, the collapse of Zaire, very soon. So stay tuned for that. But
Oh hell yeah, brother!
all I can say is there's a reason why they called the first Congo War Africa's first World War. That's all I can say. It's crazy.
Jesus, that sounds fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for making threads like that and bringing that stuff to light. I
Yeah,
don't know
no
how many of the
problem.
normie furries are gonna stumble upon it being like enlightened, but maybe one or two will be.
A surprising number of furries were interested in my thread about the Toyota War. It was mainly like random people from like gun circles on Twitter, but there are a surprising number of furries that are like really interested in this kind of stuff. Like they were really, really glad I made that thread because they're like, yeah, that's why I drive a Toyota gang. And like name a more iconic duo than Toyota Speedy Boys and Olivia losing. So yeah, it's cool when people like furries with interests as similar as mine come together and like celebrate this kind of stuff.
Hell yeah. I love hearing about that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it was great chatting with you, Crassus. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight.
Thank you so much for letting me on.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you seem like a well put together fellow, all things considered.
Yeah, I'm kind of crazy, but like I'm glad I get to do this kind of stuff.
It's in a good way.
Yeah.
Like sriracha in your coffee.
You put sriracha in coffee? Are you kidding me?
Well, not me personally, I just know a guy. Anyways, if you'd like to support the show, just share this episode around or send us a coffee at coffee/Reiner. All the links can be found in my linktree/Reiner. You've got 5 seconds to promote something. Go for it, Crassus.
Alright, stream Popular Front by Jake Hanrahan.
Is that it?
That's it. Stream Popular Front by Jake Hanrahan.
Okay.
Very niche, very niche, geeky, on the boots on the ground kind of journalism.
Alright, there you have it. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and I'll catch you later. See ya!
See ya.